Good morning. Welcome to Love Goes Live. My name is Mark Lubquist. I'm a molecular biology professor at St. Michael's College, and I've been making YouTube videos for my students. And every Friday for the last 19 years, I've gone over what was published in Science and Nature, which are the two premier journals in science, really just for no other reason than it's fun and there's cool stuff out there that we should all be sort of attuned to. And certainly it's always sort of interesting to look at what's new and emerging in the world of science. So without any further ado, we'll start with science and look at what was published this week. And it was a great week. It was a great week. All right, didn't see this coming. Never saw this coming, not in a gazillion years. All right, so here's the observation. There's two really astute researchers, one by the name of Lori Zeltzer and the other Cynthia Bulick, who are at Columbia UNC respectively. And they study anorexia. And they made two really brilliant observations. The first is that the rate of anorexia, which is about 1%, hasn't changed in 200 years, but culture has. Okay, so if it was strictly driven by cultural norms, you'd expect to see fluctuation over time, but it's been pretty consistent, 1% for 200 years. Okay, second observation is that people who are suffering from anorexia very often say that they feel best when they're not eating. Both of those imply that there might be a biological component. So they did a really complicated experiment, actually, and they looked at genetic information. So they sequenced the genomes of 55,000 people without anorexia, compared them to 17,000 people that have anorexia. And they were looking for genetic differences. And they found 8 regions that showed genetic differences between individuals in the with or without category. And of course, what were those 8 categories of genes? And they were genes that affected depression and metabolism. So some combination of a risk for depression and a risk for certain types of metabolic or certain types of metabolisms doesn't give you anorexia, but certainly seems to increase your probability of getting anorexia, or at least that's what they're arguing. Didn't see that coming. That is really, really fascinating. All right, even wilder, even wilder. Okay, so serotonin and dopamine are both neurotransmitters. Never would have seen this coming. And it turns out that when they're taken into neurons in your brain, at some frequency, they can go in and actually modify how DNA is packaged. And let me unpackage that, no pun intended. Okay, so it's really like all about your sweaters and where they are in the summertime. So if you think about like your chest of drawers, during the summertime, you take your sweaters because you don't need them and you put them away, like you bury them in the bottom of your chest of drawers. Well, that's what happens to DNA as well. So there are genes that you need to use and you have genes that you don't need to use. The genes that don't need to be used are packaged and put away, like sort of like the sweaters in the bottom of a drawer. The genes that need to be used are kept on the top, just like you keep your favorite t-shirt on the top so it's always ready to be worn. Well, so it turns out that cocaine, that's what this study was on, alters how those neurotransmitters are taken into neurons, which then change packaging where those genes are kept, which then determines how long cravings persist. So as I like to say, if it happens, there's some mechanism. And so the real question was, why does a craving for cocaine persist for years? And it seems to be related to DNA packaging done by neurotransmitters. So for those of you that are molecular biologists, we're talking about chromatin structure here and epigenetics. Gotta love it, gotta love it. Man, that is cool stuff. All right, what else have we got? Ooh, this one's really interesting. Let me start off with a caveat. This is so far away from being clinically relevant to humans, but it is interesting. So there's been a mouse model out for autism. It's not, many would argue that it's not an ideal model, but it is an animal model for autism. And this group looked at tau protein, which is a protein that's associated with many neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's. And they asked a very simple question. If we genetically manipulated these mice to crank down the amount of tau that they produced, would it have any effects on the autism phenotypes? And it did lower, but not cure, but lower the rate of those autism phenotypes in their mouse model. That is a long ways away from any sort of human clinical applications, but interesting none the least. All right, on to Nature. And Nature was equally interesting this week as well. Okay, here we go. Who would have thought science at its best? Okay, Oktoberfest in Munich, world famous carnivals, similar to carnival in Sao Paulo or Brazil or even in New Orleans. Turns out though that in Munich, every October, more methane gas is polluted in that 1 month by that one city by 10 times. Let me say that again, I just said that terribly. Munich produces 10 times more methane pollution in the month of October than Boston does an entire year. So 10 times more in 1 month in cities of equal size. So the question has been, why is there so much gas running around? Are these beer drinkers that are burping and farting, or is there something else to it? So someone went and actually quantitated this, which I want to know how they did that. I'm not going to dig that deep into the paper, so it's not that interesting. So it turns out that about 22% of the increase in methane in Munich is due to burping and farting, and the other 78% is due to people cooking sausages on the side of the road with leaky canisters of methane gas. There you go. You heard it first here in science. All right. One of the many endearing traits of humans of our species is that we're curious, right? And it's taken us so far in life and will continue to take us really far. So people wanted to know, how curious are we? So they took a group of volunteers and they showed them videos on magic tricks. And they said, okay, we will now tell you the secret of the magic trick, but you have to hold this stick. And there's a 50-50 chance that you'll get the living bejesus shocked out of you by holding the stick. But that's the cost of wanting to know the secret to the magic trick. And half of us said, yeah, I'll take the shock because I want to know that bad. Curiosity at its best. So ask yourself, would you take the shock to find out the secret to the magic trick? It's a good question. Of course, what I want to know is, like, how shocking are we talking here? So COVID-19 seems to keep having these unintended consequences to humans, particularly to the environment, most of which have been positive. Here's another one. I don't know if you can see that figure, but this is looking at seismic noise in the crust of the Earth. And so this is going across time, and these little down blips here, this is the weekends. So we're very noisy. This is really us driving around on the roads and manufacturing stuff, and you can actually measure that seismically. And then on weekends, we work less, and so on. But notice there's a big downtick here, and that is due to COVID-19. All right, there you go. The Earth is quieter, vibrating less, as we're all hunkering down. Here's another one I didn't see coming. I guess no one saw it coming. That's why it was published in Science. So a group has found bacteria that live in our gut, and some of our guts, not all of us have this bacteria, and it produces a compound called colibactin. Colibactin is a highly mutagenic agent, and it produces the same type of mutational signatures, wait for it, that are found in colon cancer. So this group is arguing, doesn't give you colon cancer, but they're arguing that it increases the risk, or the probability of getting colon cancer if you have this specific bacteria in your gut. Of course, all of us want to know, well, you test it through PCR, but if you got it, what do you do about it? Can you outcompete it? And of course, dun, 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 the cover of Nature today, recycling plastic. This is great. A group has actually isolated an enzyme from bacteria and then tinkered with it a little bit, so it's a little bit more efficient, that will break down plastics in 10 hours. So you can take out an entire bottle and it'll break that back down to its monomers, which then can be washed and reused in about 10 hours. And that's a win for sure. All right, last one for the day. This group was asking the question, so in very early stages of cancer and even in late stages of cancer, tumors will shed DNA, and that's called circulating tumor DNA. And it's been known for a while that you can detect that in blood. And the question is, like, how early can you detect it? So this group looked at lung cancer, a specific type of lung cancer, and then took blood samples of people that were at risk and then tried to determine how efficiently could they predict stage 1 and stage 2 tumors. And they were between 50 and 60% able to detect stage 1 and stage 2 lung cancer, which is typically much earlier than you can catch it clinically. All right, that's all I have for you today. My name is Mark Lubkowitz at St. Michael's College, rising from the ashes like the phoenix. Have a great week, and I'll try to get out some Love Goes Live this week on COVID-19. Oh, and let crisis bring out the best in you.